This week's project is a special project. It's known as a donut bowl. And no, it was not actually turned from a donut, but rather refers to the shape. Stay tuned and see what this project entails. So here's this week's project, although technically it's going to take a few weeks because this wood is wet. It's going to go in my kiln. But this is a beautiful crotch piece of birch. I'm hoping, based on this, that I will have what's called feathering grain, so that the grain inside will actually be marked as well. I'm not sure about that. We'll see. Birch doesn't do it as well as some other woods. The other thing that I've noticed is that there's no distinction on the end. It doesn't look like that goes beyond the bark. So it may be a case when I open this up, I find that there's nothing special about the grain pattern at all, other than it's a crotch. But we'll get ready, we'll mark it as a circle, cut it up with a chainsaw, and then get it into the kiln. I think I've shown this before. This is my circle cutting jig. And one of the advantages of it being see-through is that I can position it here, and I can determine, like, for example, here, I'm in the fourth ring in, and then I can check it up here and make sure I'm in the same place as well as down here. So I can use the fact that it's see-through to maximize the circle size by positioning it. Here you go, circle with center marked out, maximize for diameter. I'm not keeping these two pieces in this turning. I'm just going to go with this being the edge of my bowl. And I've maximized the diameter that I can turn on this guy. And that's going to be 12 inches in diameter. So here I have it mounted between centers, and this wood is wet. It was freshly cut last fall, so probably only 2 months ago. And when I checked it, it was over 30% moisture, so still pretty wet. Cutting easy though. You can see here the shavings on my arm. It is cutting well. When you've got it mounted between centers, you do have to keep tightening it up because it will spin. And you can see that here a moment ago. I tightened up my tailstock just to keep the pressure on it. And I'm just flattening the bottom out, and then I'll get a tenon on it so that I can grab it more securely. This is a case where I did let the wood speak to me. As I start shaping it, I decided that it's not going to be an open bowl, but more of a closed vessel with just a smaller opening at the top. So kind of donut shaped. That pencil line that I drew on is going to be the center and the widest part of the donut, and then I'll slope the bottom and the top away from that line. So as I usually do, when I have it between centers, I turn my bottom is next to my tailstock, and I'm going to turn a mortise and then a tenon inside of the mortise. The mortise is just going to be a foot for the enclosed vessel to sit on, and then the tenon inside of that, which I'll remove later, will be to hold it when I flip it around in my chuck. So now I have the donut flipped around and I'm in my chuck, which gives me a very secure holding, and I still have my tailstock engaged, and I'm just establishing the opening. I am going to drill it out, but I'm just establishing where my opening is going to be while I still have some tailstock support. Again, at this point, the bowl is still fairly heavy, so I like to keep my tailstock engaged as long as possible until I can remove some more weight. So I showed this in my video last week. I'll show it again here today. This is my homemade hollowing jig. I'm quite pleased with the way this works. I'll put a link up here in the corner to the previous video so you can take a look at that as well. I explain a little bit more about the manufacturing of it. And in this video, you're also going to get to see the laser attachment for this hollowing jig. Unfortunately, you can't see a lot inside what I'm doing, but I think I'm pretty good. I'm as thin as I want to be at this point because this is going back in the kiln. It's still about 20% moisture, so it's come down quite a ways just from sitting on the lathe. It's been on the lathe a couple of days, and as I thin it out, I've just been leaving it here, and it's come down in moisture. So now that it's hollowed out and relatively uniformly thick, it will be good to put it back in the kiln for a few days and it will dry out, and then I can do my finish cuts. And when I do my finish cuts, I want to get my laser installed so that I know that I've got a uniform and thin thickness. Right now it's just rough. Before I do that, this bowl is going to be interesting in that it's got a pith here, 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 and here. So it's got 4 piths on it because there was a branch piece. It does have some feathering grain here I can see, which is nice, but in here. But what I'm going to do with these piths, I'm going to coat them with glue, and that will just make sure that they don't dry out too fast. These piths, being 100% end grain, are prone to drying too fast and cracking, so I don't want that to occur. So I'm going to coat them with glue, and for this I just use cheap white glue that I buy at the dollar store and brush it on. Again, some people use paint, a good heavy latex paint. I haven't had good luck with that. The proper thing to use is N-Seal. I don't have any. And it is a little more expensive, but more so just because I don't have any on stock. N-Seal which is a polyacrylate, I believe, will do a good job as well. And that's often what lumber cutters will put on end grains on boards as they cut them, just to prevent the end cracking that they would normally get. But for my purposes here, this white glue will work perfectly well. And I'm just going to do it on the outside. Don't need to worry about the inside. Again, it's not doing anything as far as structural. It's just a coating there to slow down drying there so it's not too fast. You can see here, hopefully you can see, turn this light off. There is some beautiful feathering here, and all through here. Yellow birch, or this is yellow birch, typically doesn't have a lot of coloring to it, but this piece does have nice grain. So This will go into my kiln, stay there for a few days, and then I'll finish it up. I didn't get to show this on my last video when I used my hollowing jig, but I have my laser installed here. You can see there's a gap between the edge of the tool and the laser pointer. That gap will represent the thickness of the bowl that you're turning. So as I'm turning on the inside, you can see where that laser dot falls. And as I thin that wall out, when that laser falls off the edge of the bowl, then I know the distance from the edge of the bowl to the laser cutter head. Now, I do apologize. I do have some work to do on this. My laser support arm does have a bit of vibration, so I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board on that. But still, it's not bad. And when I shut it off, it works quite well. You can see there the laser's just starting to fall off the edge. So again, I know originally I had it set for about 1/4 of an inch, so I know that's the thickness of my walls. So it works very, very well. Quite pleased. And that's what makes this wood a beautiful piece. Remember, this was a crotch piece. There's a branch, there's a branch. That's the crotch. There's a piece of bark inclusion, which is normally found in a crotch piece. So you have those two there, and then directly opposite them, you have the bottom of those same two branches. There is some color here. You can see some of the hardwood here and here, which is beautiful. But I want to point this out, and I don't know if the camera is going to capture this. This is what they call feathering. The grain there gets distorted because you have two trees moving back and forth, and they're squishing the grain together, and it results in what's called feathering. And you see some beautiful feathering here, and you also see a bit of it down on the bottom as well. Actually, this would be more the top because that's the bark inclusion, but you see some feathering here and a lot of feathering here. So it's really beautiful from that point of view. So this has been sanded as per normal, and it's had my normal abrasive paste applied. So that's wet sanded, as you know, up to 1,000. And now I'm going to apply my polishing paste. If you've been following along in my videos, actually, in the order these come out, this will be the next video, but I made a new polishing paste. Normally my polishing paste, and this is going to be in both videos actually, normally my polishing paste carrier for polishing is mineral oil. I don't like the feel of the mineral oil because it never evaporates. And it stays on. So what I did this time around, and there's a couple different ways you can do this. This is actually beeswax and carnauba wax. Carnauba wax is harder, so it'll give me a harder finish. It'll develop more gloss as well because of the hard finish. So that's one thing. The other thing is, rather than using mineral oil, which I found just tends to stay on the surface and give it kind of an oily feel, this time around what I used as a carrier is tung oil. Now, tung oil will impart a little bit of color, but the tung oil won't stay on the surface. It doesn't really evaporate. I know I said that earlier, it evaporates. It doesn't really, but it just applies a finer film and it will wipe off, but it will leave the wax behind. So you won't get that oily feeling. So let's go ahead now, and I've applied it, as you see there. It doesn't take a lot, and now what I want to do is I want to rub this fairly hard, generate some heat. That'll melt that wax into the surface, and that's where I'll start to develop some gloss. And again, the beeswax does give it a nice natural sheen. I'm hoping that the Canuba wax, being a harder wax, will develop more shine, more gloss. And I may even do a couple coats on this. Let's see. I can see the shine there. I don't know if you can, but yeah, that's a nice shine there. You can see right there. There's a bit of chatoyance there as well, which I wasn't expecting. But that feels really nice, and it doesn't have that oily feel that the mineral oil tends to leave behind. But a nice shine. I think I'll wait a bit and then apply a second coat after a little bit. Again, that feathering there is beautiful. Really shows up nicely. But very pleased with how that polishing paste has played out. And I'll put a little bit inside just where I can reach safely with my hands, and just to give that a nice feel as well. And I'll also put some tongue oil inside there with a brush and wipe it. I'm fortunate I can get my hand in that opening. We'll go ahead now and part this off, or get ready to. I want to apply one more wax finish before I part it off. Here's a good picture of the feathering that I referred to, and it actually turned out to be very beautiful. Also, the actual pith from the crotch piece, you can see the two of them here on the top of the bowl, and the heartwood here. It is a hollow vessel, you can see inside. It's a relatively small hole, but yet it's thinned out evenly all the way throughout the bowl. And here's a little piece of bark inclusion as well. Very pleased with the way the bowl turned out. Hopefully you enjoyed this project as well. If you did, please subscribe. Thank you.